Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse. And I'm your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse is where we take Black folks into the future. You know, one of the great things about Afrofuturism and its ever expanding world is that, doing this show, I've come to meet so many people and talk to so many folks about their different views on it and look at the work that they're doing. And one of the questions that comes up is, how do we get this across to young people? We look at the benefits of Afrofuturism, we talk about its place in the world and shaping the future, and people will often ask, how can we get this across to young people? Well, today's guest has come up with a way to get it across to young people. This morning, we are joined by B. Sharise Moore. B. Sharise Moore is an award-winning writer whose poems and short stories have appeared in Chosen Realities, Summer 2020, These Bewitching Bonds, Mermaid Monthly, Starline, and Fantasy Magazine. Her short poem, Black Beak, is currently nominated for a 2022 Dwarf Star Award. At present, she is a writer, educator, curriculum designer, and poetry editor for Fire Magazine of Black speculative fiction and Conjuring Worlds, an Afrofuturist textbook for middle and high school students. Her middle grade compendium, Fangs, Feathers, and Folklore, Africa's Amazing Beast, is forthcoming from Algonquin Books in 2023, and Fatima's Fantastic City. Her social justice picture book is forthcoming from HarperCollins in 2025. As folks say, she is doing big things. So we'd like to welcome B. Sharise Moore. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, William.
No, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. I really want to get right into it. In terms of Afrofuturism and Black speculative fiction, what puts you on this path? What put you on this journey?
Oh my goodness. Probably, and this is going to sound strange, but my speculative journey probably started with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. Back then in the 80s, when I was a child, there was no word for this. It was fantasy and, or science fiction. I even think magical realism is a fairly new term, you know. So those words, Afrofuturism, steampunk, diesel funk, etc. Those words were something that I had no idea about. But at the time, I knew that I loved the fantastic. I knew that I loved the future, and I knew that I loved the impossible, and I loved magic. And so that's where it began. And then I later on discovered Octavia Butler. And then here we are.
Right.
Afrofuturism. Mm-hmm.
Now, for many people, folks are still trying to get a handle on exactly what it means. And for me, it's ever changing. When you hear Afrofuturism, how have you interpreted it? What does it mean to you?
I think I'm going to go back to that word possibility again. Because for me, Afrofuturism has never only meant the future. I think it also means a reimagining the possibilities of the past as well. So as someone who loves time travel and even the concept of it, for me, Afrofuturism is something that we strive for a more diverse and inclusive and equitable future, for Black folks in this country and across the diaspora and of course on the continent of Africa. But it's also about, using our history as a means of gathering lessons from the past to use as building blocks for that future. And also in our stories, reimagining what things would be like if the past were different, because that's something that's always cool to me.
Excellent. Now, in terms of all of your work that kind of, I guess, led you up to creating this textbook. Where did the inspiration come from? How is it that you came upon this particular project?
Uh, well, firstly, I am the daughter of two educators.
Mhm.
So my mother was an educator for 43 years. I think she spent 25 in a classroom and the remaining years as a guidance counselor, high school guidance counselor. And my father was an acclaimed musician, like he played six or seven instruments. And he was also a music teacher and a principal. And so from there, you know, I always wanted to be a writer.
Right.
I wanted to, I was an only child. So I grew up reading and I was surrounded by books. So I'm very grateful for that environment. And I think I wanted to be a writer as young as maybe 10 or 11. I was very, very young.
Okay.
And but at that time, and even now as I'm meeting young people and through college, like there's not a lot of direction that's given to young people who want to write. In fact, people are often discouraged,
Agree.
from focusing on writing full time. And so even though I did what I could, I was the editor of one of the newspapers at Rutgers University, which is my undergrad alma mater. I wrote, I attempted to do internships, I did all those things, but still, writing just a job in the journalism field just didn't appear.
Hmm.
So what did I do? I started to teach,
Right.
because I said, okay, I obviously need to support myself in some way. So I started to teach and I never stopped writing. In fact, I became a spoken word poet while I was in college, traveled the country doing poetry, slamming, winning slams, and all of that. And then I met a professor who did at least, Dr. Regina Jennings. She encouraged me to be published. And she was the first person to publish me in an anthology through Rutgers University Press. And it was amazing. And I was there with Hakeem Alaboudi and Amiri Baraka. I was an ancestor now. So it was an incredible experience. And I was hungry for more. So I'm teaching English and I started to look at the curriculum and like there was nothing there for children of color,
Right.
just nothing. And I mean, nothing approved, nothing. I mean, not even a short story. Like it was just
Wow.
horrible, you
Right.
know? And what we did see was, a lot of your older texts like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry,
Right.
you would see that. You might see Still I Rise. You might see something from Langston Hughes, The Negro Speaks of Rivers or something like that. But there was very few things, very few texts. And so I said, well, if there isn't anything here, then I'm going to write it.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to write it. And then ironically, while I was a spoken word artist, I was always writing speculative poetry. And this was before, again, speculative poetry is a very fairly new term. Like this is not something that's more than about 10 years old, or correct me if I'm wrong, because somebody might say, oh no, it was invented in 1980, fine. But I know I hadn't heard it. And I know
Right.
that, in my MFA program, no one said it. So I was unaware of it. And I was writing these pieces. And I wrote this one piece, and it was about a hypothetical conversation between Marvin Gaye's father and Joe Jackson's father about their
Wow.
son.
Interesting.
And so I was writing these speculative works, like my very first chapbook back in the late 90s. When we went to spoken word venues, we would sell our chapbooks for $5. And my first chapbook was called Verbal Voodoo. So I
Right.
was always writing these speculative works, that interwove magic and history. And so I said to myself, well, I gotta figure this out. And then I'm introduced to Octavia Butler, and I never turned back. Just
Gotcha.
never, ever, ever turned back.
So for you folks listening, when we talk about writing and how to bring folks in, a title is everything. Because if I see verbal voodoo, I'm picking that up. So that is awesome. So if you're just joining us, you're listening to Into the Afroverse with your host William Jones, and today we are joined by B. Sharise Moore, and we're talking about Afrofuturism and bringing it into the classroom. So now you have this thing, you found your love, you found your passion, you found your voice through Afrofuturism, speculative
Mhm.
fiction, and so forth, and you've seen what is lacking. So you create
Right.
this textbook. Can you give us an idea of what we will find in this textbook, and what is it that, how students can use this to assist them in their academic growth?
I think that this textbook ended up being shaped by and large my own philosophy of education.
Mhm.
So I believe in a holistic approach to education, so I love interdisciplinary and cross-curricular lessons. And this is something that I always loved, even while I was in the classroom. While I was in the classroom, from 2018 to 2020, our school had a maker space. Now, what is a maker space? A maker space is like an industrial room
Mhm.
full, and it's filled with like everything you need to create whatever you want, really,
Right.
and our librarian had actually created a she not created, but she'd written a grant for the room. So there was a green screen there where the students would do announcements, and there was, countless markers and uh, pieces of construction paper and glue and scissors and glitter and anything that you could possibly imagine, cardboard for building. And so I would, whenever we had an open time, I would run down and make an appointment in the makerspace because I know my students actually read the book Ghost by Jason Reynolds. Now that's not a speculative book, but Ghost is about a young man who discovers a love for track, and he uses his track as therapy.
Right.
And so he ends up, buying a pair of shoes. And I don't want to give too much away, but
Right.
his shoes are assembled in the book. And so my students actually made their own shoes. And they made shoes out of cardboard and different materials, and the shoes had to fit a specific character of their choice. And the character, the shape and the size and the color and the texture of the shoe depended upon, how the author described the character in the novel.
Right.
So in Conjuring Worlds, I've developed quite a few activities. There's over 100 tiered activities in the
Mhm.
book, and these activities span from science to history to technology to, of course, English language arts, because it's kind of centered in
Right.
English language arts, to social studies. I think I said social studies,
Yeah.
art, music, etc. So in it, you'll find 11 short stories, 8 poems, 9 essays, and 3 original pieces of artwork. And each of those has a set number of activities to accompany them. And they're like dig deep or extension activities. There are also 385 words for a glossary. So there's a glossary, extensive glossary in the back of the book. There's vocabulary. I've pulled out all tier 2 and tier 3 words, and those words are
Right.
bold throughout the essays and the short stories. And I have discussion questions and comprehension questions. And I also have guiding unit questions at this beginning of each unit. There's 4 different units. So it is set up a lot like a textbook, but it's not as busy. I wanted to create a textbook that was as busy. I have this actually textbook that was created that we created, because I don't want to take credit. There's so many amazing people who put work into this.
Right.
This is nowhere near a one person effort, but this is the least busy textbook that I've ever seen. And
Oh,
as a teacher, I have always been intimidated by textbooks.
yeah.
It's just so many words on every single page.
Yes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, students
So
too. I
yeah.
mean, students will open up a book, they'll look at the size of it, they'll look at the print. No, I'm not dealing with that, and they'll just put it to the
Yes,
side without even
yes,
taking a chance. I'm glad you took that into account. So, do
yes.
you do workshops with this book? Are teachers given some type of guidance? Do you come out to schools ever to talk with them how to use it?
Well, the book was just released. The hardcover version was just released last month.
Okay.
So, and it was just in time really for the summer.
Right, right, right.
Now, what I am doing is I am fielding all kinds of opportunities for that to happen. And I am open to that happening. So there is a charter school in Washington, D.C. that is interested in using the book. And there's also a summer literacy program in Lane, South Carolina. And an educator named Salifu Mack is actually working with it now.
Okay.
Now, as far as the use of the textbook, it's pretty straightforward. So there doesn't need to be
Right.
any workshop per se. And I like to leave it open because, I wanted teachers to be able to have freedom, you know.
Okay.
So there's really no need, I don't think anyway, for any type of workshop, but I'm definitely open, to giving it. And there's also rubrics in the back. So there's 21 customized rubrics
Excellent.
also in the back of the book as well.
Excellent. Once again, this is from middle school to high school.
Correct.
Excellent. So how can folks get a copy of this book? How can they reach you?
Sure. So if you'd like to reach me directly, you can reach me at bsharise@gmail, and that's BSHARISE@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is Sharise_B. That's SHARISE_B. And Instagram and TikTok are the same, and that's B.Sharise.
And
So
mhm.
and you can find the book anywhere books are sold. Um, let's see. So of course you can find it on Amazon
Right.
and barnesandnoble.com, and I believe walmart.com too, and Target as well. But if you'd like to order the textbooks in bulk, please contact me directly through my email, bsharise@gmail, and I can offer a discount for 5 books or more.
Excellent. You see that, folks? What happens when you tune in to Into the Afroverse? You get discounts on excellent books for young people. So what has been the response? I know you're saying that it just came out this summer,
Mhm.
but from the people that have ordered, from the teachers that have looked at it, maybe from some of the young people that have had a chance to use it, what has been the response so far?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. In fact, I don't think I've had any negative
Right,
responses yet.
right,
Um, one one homeschooling parent contacted me directly, almost in tears, because her daughter is dyslexic, and she was so ecstatic about the clean layout and how it wasn't intimidating,
right.
and how the pages. I chose a specific page type that if students want, they can actually write in the book. So, with glossy pages, you really can't write in a book.
Right.
But I chose like, the heavy white paper. And so it is possible for students to mark up entries and annotate and write down their thoughts in the margins. And she loved that. She also loved the size of the font. The educator, Salifu Mack, actually was excited about the fact that it spans so many different subjects. So just recently, this past week, he read The Great Dismal Swamp Speaks,
Hmm.
and that is a poem by Audrey Williams. And it also has an accompanying essay about the Great Dismal Swamp. And it not only talks about and Great Dismal Swamp is by Ellen Davis, PhD, and she talks about the ecology of the swamp, but
Hmm.
she also talks about the swamp as a hub for a maroon society during slavery, which is incredible. So, in the poem, you get a look at the swamp as a living thing, almost as this entity. But in the essay, the accompanying essay, you get some more facts and history of the swamp. And so Salifu Mack has been talking to his students about maroon societies, and he's been talking to them about capitalism and government. And the feedback was that he was able to do so much, you know, just with 2 pieces of literature. And he was able to make so many different connections, which opened up, the opportunity for discussion. And it also led to, students writing their own poetry and creating and completing, assignments that are connected. So that's the feedback that I'm getting, that it really pretty much has everything. And it's also, the activities are also tiered. So for those of you who are not educators, a tiered activity is an activity that is created with different types of learners involved. So I used Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences to create many of those activities. So that separates different learners into, verbal linguistic learners, logical mathematical learners, naturalist learners, musical learners. What am I missing? Because I think there's 9
Right.
existential learners, etc. So please look up Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence if you have the time. And I also tier the activities for learners who are at different ability levels. So I have activities that are basic activities, advanced, complex, least complex, more complex, activities that you can complete with technology or without technology. I just wanted to make sure I was inclusive of different types of students, because I know that is very, very important in education.
Excellent. I'm loving the thought that went into creating this book, everything from, you mentioned the paper, the text, the different levels of learning and so forth. So I can definitely hear how it would appeal to middle schoolers all the way to high schoolers. Do you have anything for elementary schools? Because I'm sure somebody's out
So
there listening, they want to know.
I do not now.
Okay,
And that's only because I'm a certified secondary teacher.
gotcha.
So, my certification and pretty much the majority of all the work I've ever done has been for students in grades 6 and up. So
Excellent.
that's my wheelhouse.
Right, right. So all you
Yeah.
educators out there, you writers out there, we're putting the gauntlet down. We got middle school or high school covered. Can't forget about the pre-K. Can't forget about the elementary school. So let's get the work out there. Uh, and once again, you're listening to Into the Afroverse with William Jones here on WOL 1450 AM 95.9 FM, where information is power. Today, where you see that education really is under assault, if we're honest with ourselves, and we're talking about taking books out of schools. We're talking about what can't be taught in a classroom. Where
Mhm.
does this work fit into that conversation?
I also created it because of that too.
Okay.
And to be quite honest, I've been really frustrated with public school education for many years, which led me to leave in 2020. Um, because I don't know, it just didn't work. And I think one of the things that really upset me more than anything was, here I am getting a master's degree in curriculum writing, right?
Right.
And I'm taking these amazing courses and I'm just rushing to bring it back, you know, to the powers that be, because I have a job curriculum writing in my school system. So I'm like, okay, this is amazing. Like, I'm taking a class and I'm actually doing the work at the same time, simultaneously. And the things that I brought back, I wasn't allowed to use.
Wow.
There is no trickle down from academia to our middle and high schools at all. I don't even know where the knowledge where it's going, because it just seems to be going into like the ether or something.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and that is really, really frustrating. And so I started to inquire more about homeschooling collectives
Mhm.
and homeschoolers and independent schools, because I was curious about what they were doing, you know, um, in comparison with what the public schools were doing.
Right.
And I was very impressed with some of the things that they're doing. They have so much more freedom than public school teachers, have, which is leading to so many teachers leaving.
Right.
Teachers feel stunted. They don't feel appreciated. It's a very difficult job. Teaching was the most difficult job I've ever done outside of being a mom.
Agree.
And So I'm hoping that this will fill a void, definitely for independent schoolers and homeschoolers who have the freedom to purchase a textbook like this and use it. But also, if it can sneak into some public schools, or charter
Right.
schools,
Right.
that's amazing too, because in this text, you're going to find poetry and short stories from amazing authors that you've never seen before anywhere, and they are current.
Excellent. So, the great thing is, when I saw it was this, the Harry Potter boom, I saw these young people picking up Harry Potter and so forth. What I like what you're doing is now you're including children that look like us,
Yes,
because I can imagine reading, Harry Potter and all these other books that became popular. We were left out. And I really appreciate the fact that through this medium of Afrofuturism and the work that you're doing, that you are bringing us back into the fold because we love this stuff too. And we do
right,
need to see ourselves in it, so
absolutely.
we are running out of time. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yes, I would be remiss if I did not thank everyone who was involved with this textbook.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go as quickly as I can, but first and foremost, I want to thank um, J. Al Farran, who was the he was our graphic designer and our layout editor. Without him and the many, 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 many hours of work he put into laying out the textbook, this textbook would not be possible. I want to thank Jason Harris and Renee Higgins um, for just giving me feedback early on and encouraging me to go through with the Indiegogo campaign. I also want to thank Sarah Hibbert. She is an educator who kind of looked through the textbook and gave me some amazing feedback. So did Lene Higgins. I'd also like to thank Helena Hartsfield, who assisted with some of the design of the curriculum inside of the textbook, the discussion questions, etc. And then, of course, I'd like to thank all of the individuals who participated and donated the money for the Indiegogo campaign that I set out and put out there in 2020, June 2020.
Right.
It took 2 years to put it together, but we did it. So I want to thank them, and of course everyone who's contributed to the textbook, and that's Linda D. Addison, Maurice Brodas, Jessica Cage, Cody Canty, P. Jelly Clark, Ellen Davis, PhD, Milton J. Davis, Kyrie Isabel Soleil Dawson, Tananariu Du, Owen Chovwe, Donald Ekpeki, Zeta Elliott, Zion Fort, Kia Kellebrew, Mark Anthony Lewis, Pages Matam, L.H. Moore, Janelle Naomi, Ashley Slade, Cherie Renee Thomas, David West, Troy L. Wiggins, Audrey T. Williams, Kanisha Williams, El Marie Wood, and K. Cerise Wright.
Excellent. And I want to thank you for putting this together because it is surely needed. So once again, folks, teachers, educators, parent groups, get together, get this book, get it into the hands of these young people. And once again, the book is Conjuring Worlds, an Afrofuturistic textbook for middle and high school students. And with that, that is Into the Afroverse. I'm your host, William Jones. Once again, we're taking Black folks into the future. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.